Hi, my name is Daniel Cook, and this is my final video presentation for Leadership 699, the Capstone class for my Masters of Organizational Leadership program at Colorado Christian University. Over the past 12 weeks, I've been working towards the completion of my master's thesis, which focused on transitional leadership. Specifically, I wanted to research a theory that there must be one, maybe two specific leadership styles that are best adapted for reorganization or transitional periods. Due to the hectic and trying nature of these transitions, it made sense to me that there had to be a leadership style that is best suited to handle it. To test this theory, I reviewed all 15 of Peter Northhouse's distinct leadership styles and chose 5 of those styles that best fit the scenario of transition and studied those ones specifically. Aside from just determining leaders and followers in the survey, I also elaborated on the demographic section of the survey to include additional factors such as education and professional position to see if anything else made a difference in the survey results. As stated, I chose 5 of Peter Northhouse's leadership styles, and those were the trait approach, situational approach, path goal theory, leader member exchange, and psychodynamic approach. Now, in the onset of this research, I set a goal for myself to receive 100 responses on this survey. Sadly, I fell a little bit short with only gaining 88, but it's still enough responses to get some really good information out of. Now, to perform this research, I utilized a customized Google Forms survey, which I created 3 distinct sections to the survey, first being demographics, then sections specifically for people who identified as leaders or followers during transitions, and then one final question that everyone answered identically. So I chose Google Forms in part because of the customization that it does afford, but it's also because of the amount of data that I'm able to extract from that survey. Every answer, every click of the button, I'm able to export to Excel and dig through even deeper, getting even more information than I initially thought was possible. Now, noteworthy results for the demographic section came back initially with a very good response of a wide range of survey takers. Uh, as far as genders were concerned, it was split almost 50-50. There was one person who preferred not to disclose. So of the 88, 44 were men, 43 were women. Now, about 70% of all respondents fell within a range that puts them into the either millennial or Generation Z generational timeframes, which is a point that I'll actually be able to touch on a little bit later with some of the other results. Uh, 3/4 of all the respondents had at least a bachelor's degree, so it was nice being able to comb through a lot of really educated answers and kind of compare and contrast education with maybe someone who didn't have a college degree but a lot more experience. 28% of all respondents described themselves as upper management, either a director, vice president, senior vice president, president, owner, anything like that. And then for the 2 groups that we primarily focused on, people who identified as leaders and followers during transition, it was about a 78-22 split. So there were a lot more people that identified as leaders. There's a little bit less follower data than I would have preferred. For each of for the second section, where people were divided between leaders and followers, they were each listed identical options with all of the leadership styles with 5 identical definitions, and asked the same questions based on them being a leader or a follower. So when leaders were asked which style they would prefer to use if they were to lead a transition in the future, based on the definitions given to them, 30% of them, the largest percentage, chose the psychodynamic approach. Now, of the 30% that chose psychodynamic, 57% of them had previously used a psychodynamic approach, So they had experience. It was clearly a good experience if they're using it again. Um, and my assumption would be that the second place uh, uh, approach in this would be the situational approach, just based on, it transitional leadership is sort of what a situational approach would be, I kind of ideal for. But surprisingly, most leaders actually thought that the trait approach would be the second most useful approach, with not too far behind 27.5% of the votes. Now, the followers, only having 19 survey responders identify as followers, makes making a claim about the followers a little bit more difficult, just because of the lack of information. I do still feel like I'll be able to make some soft claims, but it would be very difficult to say this is what followers think in stone. However, the clear majority of people identified as followers favored the leader-member exchange for future transitions. Uh, this bodes well because of that 47%, 55% of them fell within that millennial or Generation Z generational time gap that I touched on earlier, which does agree with recent studies that younger generations value communication and input above almost anything else in the workplace. Um, Now, finally, the final question that I kind of mentioned earlier was simply, which party do you believe is more important to the success or failure of organizational transition, the leader or the follower? Now, the people who identified as followers overwhelmingly believe that leadership is the most important factor in this. The people who identified as leaders also agreed that the majority uh, chose leaders being the most important, however, not at quite the same strength. Where followers believed at an 84% rate, the leaders were right about 70%. Now, what I found most interesting about these results were that the leaders who chose followers, um, percentage wise, had more advanced degrees, either a master's or doctorate degree. And they tended to be a higher position within their organization, some sort of upper management. So it would seem clear that experience tends to favor the importance of a good followership behind that leader. Now, these research claims, again, based on 88 total responses, but it does seem fairly clear that leaders prefer the psychodynamic approach to reorganizational transition. Um, it was far and away the highest rated leadership style when ranked, from 1 to 5, 1 being not very effective and 5 being very effective. It received the most votes. Most people had used it. It received the highest score, and it was the only style that received a rating over 4 out of 5. Now, the followers preferred leader member exchange. However, none of the followers had actually used that previously. They chose that based on the definition and what they would like in the future. So it seems like that may have been romanticized, maybe just a little bit, since they don't have any actual experience with it. Research that was completed would contribute, if released and published to the masses. I believe that the demographics used will definitely help, especially with Generation Z. Right on the track of graduating college this year and entering the workforce, um, and being able to focus on styles rather than um, the leader themselves. I think will actually help clarify results as well. Now, the opportunities for further research, I believe, are vast. I believe that there can be more opportunities to study leadership styles specifically, but I also believe that the opportunity to study the difference of the impact of leaders and followers is also just ripe for the picking. I believe that any of these would be super useful in any future research, and I hope that it does happen.